The whole time too, the wind was shifting left to right, pushing it across the road, pushing it back across, then pushing it towards Maryville. And so we couldn't catch it because it kept looping around everything we would try. And then it was just so fast that it was unmanageable. And I watched as more people would go in. At one point, there was a line of, I want to say, 6 or 8 bulldozers, a line, pushing, widening out a path as big as a highway. And they were getting ready, getting it up there. And as soon as that fire hit it, it didn't care. It just right across. And we're used to putting 3, what we call a blade length. So the blade of the bulldozer wide. We put 2 to 3 wide on a fire. They were putting 6 and 8 blades wide, and they couldn't stop it. It would jump from treetop to treetop, or it would literally just right across and without hesitation.
Since Tiger Island fire, there's been a significant change in the fire departments. Of course, the increased training and ensuring that we are able to respond to incidents of that nature. Some of the big significant changes, of course, were from operational standpoints. We probably have more wildland firefighting capability and equipment in the parish now than we've ever had, at least in my career. And that's due to the impact of the Tiger Island and the things that we had to endure during that time frame. There was a lot of lessons learned from the Tiger Island, and we're continuously trying to improve upon those each day. One of the things that has been a very good operational change is our communication and our coordination with the forestry. That has been improved. They actually attend meetings with us, and we are coordinating and communicating with them regularly so we can ensure that we're all on the same page. Hopefully an event like this will never happen again, but we're doing everything we can to be better prepared if this ever happens again, that we have a more coordinated response and have a better overall outcome, hopefully.
So one of the biggest challenges that I saw, being in the Unified Command Group, was and it's that way with a lot of disasters or incidents, that communication is always the biggest hurdle. And it was especially difficult in this case because we had a lot of agencies that were trying to help that we couldn't communicate with. We didn't have their radios and they didn't have our radios, and we didn't really have the ability to talk to them. And we tried to have a briefing every morning with all of the people there so we could find out from them what they were doing, they could find out from us what we were doing, and try to coordinate it that way. And it took a little while to get that to work, but it eventually got better. The communication got better, and I think that was the biggest hurdle that we had.
For 2023, one of the things that really assisted with getting resources here to the state, and we'll back up a little bit. In 1998, the state of Florida was on fire for most of the state, just the same as it was for Louisiana in 2023. In 2023, there was nothing else really going on in the nation as far as wildfire situations. So we were able to bring in a lot of the resources to help with this. Through the teams, through ourselves, through the National Forest Service and everything like that, start ordering and bringing things in to help with this. It really made it available. It was a godsend that this did happen, that no other states were on fire really except for Louisiana. Even Texas, a lot of them had slowed down. Their eastern side bordering up to us was in extreme drought too, but they weren't picking up a lot of fires either. Mississippi, like I stated before, was in a drought as well. Theirs didn't pick up until after ours had started dying off, so I was able to share resources with them that way and everything. So The drought carried on, though. It carried on up until January, so it remained dry. We had overcast and everything like that, but we never really got any moisture or anything like that to start zeroing out the KVI scale I spoke of before.
And you know, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the management side of it. If you look at Comanche National Forest, it's 600,000 acres in 7 Louisiana parishes. And of course, right here in central Louisiana, we have a lot of national forest land. So what we try to do, one thing is timber sales. A lot of people don't know that the National Forest System sells timber, but it does, and it has for many, many years. And that's part of our management strategy, because when you look at the ecosystems here, trees, too many trees can be a problem sometimes. But when you have a more open canopy and you can get grass on the ground, grass that will carry a prescribed fire, a controlled fire when you want it to, that's a very good thing. So with our timber sales, we are opening up these stands of trees. Many times it's longleaf pine. There were about 94 million acres of longleaf pine in the South originally. Now we're down to between 4 and 5 million acres of longleaf pine. So the National Forest System is dedicated to bringing these native natural species back. And we have other native pines here that we grow also. But longleaf is one that we keep our eye on and try to increase the acres of. So we're thinning, and we're also prescribed burning, or controlled burning, as some people say. And some of the old timers would say, now you boys will learn that fire is good. Well, the Forest Service knows that and has learned that fire at the right time, at the right place, being introduced by the right people that know what they're doing can be a very, very good thing. So we have many acres of the National Forest System that look great. I mean, they look like a park out there, because you know how it is. Sometimes you're driving along in your car and you're just looking at a wall. The pines will be so thick, and species like sweet gum and yaupon, they'll just be a wall of those. Well, you can't see through them. They're hard to walk through. They're even hard for wildlife to get through. But if we start prescribing burning that, and we take some of those species out of the picture, we lower the number of them, and you've got longleaf pine and grass and wildfire, longleaf pine and grass and wildflowers there. It's a beautiful environment, and it's an environment in which you can control wildfires, because that will give the firefighters a chance to get in there and do what they need to do to put a fire out. Now, many times the state and the Forest Service, what we'll do, we'll plow or push as few lines as we can, not to disturb the ground there, and we may backfire off a road, something that's a human-made thing, a road, or we may backfire off of a river or stream if we have enough water in it to hold the fire. And that way you're putting that black space in between the fire and more fuel, and we can put out a wildfire that way.
One of the things it did help us is to be able to look at somebody's house and say, hey, I can protect that, or I can't protect it. And making that hard decision to say, I'm not going to put a firefighter's life in danger over a piece of property. We'll do a lot to save a life, but there's no sense in risking the life of a firefighter over somebody's property that can be rebuilt. The public sometimes doesn't look at it like that, you know, but as an incident commander or as a chief officer that is wanting to make sure that everything on that incident goes as well, my first priority is safety of my firefighters and safety of the community. So if I have to evacuate everything and let it burn to keep my firefighters and the community safe, that's a decision I have to make. Those are some hard decisions at some time, especially when you have a family there, or when you have somebody looking at everything that they own is going up in flames. But at the end of the day, our job is to be able to help our community and to go home to our families every day. At the end of the day, my priority is for every one of the firefighters that work for me is to go home to their family. So we still have fields on the ground. We still are not doing prescribed burning. So those are two things. We've got a lot of fuel, not prescribed burning. The next thing that comes in play is weather conditions. If we have another drought where we have high winds and low humidities over a period of time, it's going to happen again. And this time we have to make sure that we've learned lessons from the past, can bring in better tactics, and maybe bring in additional help prior to the larger events occurring where they're growing. So it's going to take forethought of the emergency managers working with the fire chiefs. When we start seeing a pattern where we're having 25 fires in a week, that, hey, we might need to start getting some additional help here now instead of being reactive when the big fire hits.
Wildland firefighting across the country obviously is different upon everybody's topography, weather conditions, things like that. I think the biggest exposure our people get is on the nightly news of everything going on in the West. Yet we have great struggles here in Louisiana. We unfortunately don't have the firefighting methods that California uses when we really get tasked to serious events. Basically, the volunteer firefighting world of Louisiana are the ones who really protect the rural areas, short of the forestry coming with their fire plows. So we're kind of a water-based firefighting group. We need water. Whether it comes from the fire hydrant, it's the water we carry in our trucks. Maybe we can pull some water out of a bayou ditch, somebody's backyard swimming pool, a small pond that we can drive our trucks up to and get water from. I said, we're kind of water-based. The West has it a whole lot different than we do. They have, obviously, their hotshot crews, and wildland firefighters are on the ground, and without water, they make fire breaks. They do interesting things with their hand tools and that to fight fire. Okay, and then they have also air operations. Large converted aircraft carry thousands of gallons of water, and of course they have aerial water tankers that dive bomb a fire, for lack of better words. So there is quite a division, and most of their city firefighters who are ringed with dense vegetation or have mutual aid agreements with other fire departments, they are very well trained in wildland urban interface firefighting, and we don't do a lot of that here.
It's very sobering. One of the things that the public probably doesn't see is the stress responding to different emergencies puts on your firefighters. The fire service in general, especially the volunteer and the career fire service that works in the municipal side, in the last few years have really focused on critical incident stress debriefing sessions, where we do the CISM training, where we come together after hard incidents. We give each one of the firefighters an avenue to be able to talk. To me, that focus on your emergency responders' mental health has to be just as much as the focus on safety of them being physically hurt. Early in my career, we worked an incident where a whole family of 5 was killed in a vehicle crash. And I remember the fire chief saying, "Oh, y'all suck it up." That's the mentality it was in the early 90s, late 80s, back in the, before PTSD, before a lot of this became known, the effects, studies were started to be done and studies were conducted, and it showed that emergency responders had about a 3 or 4 times % higher suicide rate than the normal everyday citizens, and tied directly back to things that they've experienced from emergency response and stress disorders that can affect them that, they may have worked 30 years and never been bothered by it, and then one day something triggers that. So we've got to do a better job identifying that for the people we work with and making sure that resources is there. As a fire chief, sometimes I feel helpless because I can't force somebody to do it. What I try to do is lead by example. So when we have a traumatic call, we schedule the CISM meeting and bring it all together, and I make sure I attend and participate in every one of those meetings, because I want my firefighters to realize that it's okay to participate. It's okay to talk. It's okay to be vulnerable. And it's okay to get help. That's the main thing.
When this fire first started, as we had talked about, this event was not really a law enforcement event as much as it was our role, and it was to make sure that the people that were in the affected areas were getting notified and that were assisted in evacuating, and to make sure that we kept them informed, because this thing was changing every day, and sometimes multiple times a day, that the wind would change and the fire would move in a different direction, and it was so big, they were plowing fire lanes, and it was so dry and the wind was so high that the fire was just jumping the fire lanes. They couldn't contain it for many, many, many days before we could finally get a little bit of rainfall to kind of slow it down some. It was definitely an eye-opening thing for all of us.